Hey y'all, it's Connor from Bigfoot Anonymous. We just got done with the cavern tour. I'm with Kim and Donnie from Standing Goats Rescue. I had to take them to the tunnel cave. Sadly, it's a little flooded. Got water in my boots, but that's what it's about. This is why I moved to Florida. Today, we are going to read a chapter out of Big Brother Bigfoot, one of my favorite stories, the Pascagoula Prowlers, Moss Point, Mississippi. The rougarou has been prowling and patrolling the Pascagoula long before the phantom barber terrorized the region. Monster alligators, poisonous snakes, and hogs the size of cars know to avoid the werewolf of Fever Swamp. The local tribesmen have stories and encounters that date back to the beginning of the land, while the people of the bayou are still encountering this beast to this day. Protect your pets along the Pascagoula. The prowlers are closer than you think. Creatures and mystery are no stranger to Mississippi. Ancient tribes once inhabited these lands and mysteriously vanished, leaving behind ruins and artifacts. There have been countless mounds and temples discovered throughout the state. They have excavated giant skeletons from these camps. Some believe bayous in the south were carved out by the giants that Jack slayed. In 1972, the entire town of Pascagoula had the UFO fever after hundreds of people witnessed unexplainable lights in the sky. The Navy clocked a vehicle moving at incredible speeds over the bay, but two men encountered the otherworldly beings near a shipyard on an uncomfortable level. They were later picked up by police and relayed their stories. While catfishing, they witnessed multiple creatures climb out of a spacecraft hovering above the water. The three aliens took the boys after they fainted in terror. The creatures took the boys to a bright lit room on the ship. They were in a giant floating eyeball that inspected them and scanned them up and down. The beings had no eyes, pincer hands, and gray elephant skin. A feminine creature inspected them and put her fingers down their throat and nose. After choking, she telepathically told them everything would be okay. The next thing the men knew, they were back on the fishing pier. The men were unharmed but terrified. One ditched his clothes because he was scared he would contaminate the world with his alien germs. The police recorded the men, and it's stunning. The story made national news and was one of the first alien abduction mysteries of modern America. We started the morning off heading to the Gulf Coast Gator Ranch in Moss Point. I was stoked. I had seen the place on a couple episodes of the Gator Boys. On the drive, Adam and I played the audio from the alien abduction news cases. We were there, beings in the sky, but we were worried about the violent rougarou and Bigfoot encounters locals reported. Two boys who were walking with their German Shepherd in the woods, the dog ran off ahead and came back almost immediately whimpering. They continued further and saw a freshly killed boar. The hind legs were snapped in two. The ribs of the pig were impaled in a nearby tree. The symbol must have been a warning or a tribal marker. We arrived at the Gator Ranch and signed up for an airboat tour. I admired all the cool knickknacks of the gift shop and asked the lady at the front desk if she had seen any strange creatures around. She said the dinosaurs out back were strange enough, but she did say they filmed a TV show called Killing Bigfoot right around the region. Before we knew it, our captain Sam was giving us the rules and regulations of the rougarou. That's right, our boat was named after the famed creature I was hoping to encounter. Adam's parents laughed, but were probably embarrassed when I asked if we could see any on tour. Sam replied that we just might, and his grandma used to warn him of the beast every time he left the house. We tore up the waterways with the fan boat. Sam was drifting and splashing like Paul Walker in Into the Blue. He showed us a blind gator named Ray Charles. He sure was happy to see us. He had a collection of marshmallows in his marshway. We pulled deep into the back of the lagoon, and he called for his gator friends. He gave off a loud, coughing grunt, and then even called them like they were dogs. In a few of the spots, the gators came right up to the boat, and in others, no response. One narrow canal had a couple of baby alligators, so we began to search for the big bull. Sam said there's one big alpha for every 250 acres. We were determined to find it. He turned the fan down and just coasted down the narrow stream. I shielded my face from the tree branches and kept my eyes out for snakes. We checked every crevice for the dinosaur. We spotted some slide marks and could smell that he was nearby, but he must have dug up in the mud. We got a part that was so thick, the only choice was to turn around. I noticed a strange feeling, but just attributed to the monster gator. Now the feeling of dread was knocking on my door. I could sense something was near. We had swam too far. I panned from left to right, searching for the source of this tear. The brush was thick, and there was near zero visibility, but I knew it had eyes on us. The horror felt like the sun, but it was subtle as well. Sam noticed I was scanning around and he worked his best to get the boat turned around. I think he had noticed it well before I did. We kicked off the trees, but got her straightened out. He fired it up, but the motor started spinning. That's when the rest of the boat finally started to pick up on the unusual vibe coming from the swamp. But I had already been visualizing the creature from the Black Lagoon for what felt like hours. As the group stared at Sam, I nudged at him, and he was already had his nose up like a dog. The pungent alligator smell had worsened into damp clothes, a chemically poisoned smell. It reeked like there was a den of roadkill buried away back in the hideout. The nest had to be nearby. There were bent trees and still the feeling in the air. I felt like the feeling we were surrounded, but luckily Sam got the boat running and we jetted out of there. When we slowed down, Sam said poachers were very common in the area. He thinks we might have spooked one of them. Adam and I smirked at each other, but the other families bought it. We found the big bull gator in a lagoon near a wooden bridge on the way back, and Adam saw a prehistoric alligator guard too. Never know what's going to happen out there. We got a picture with the captain and walked to the ranch grounds. There were baby gators, eggs, and a boardwalk that took us over the water. There were dinosaurs everywhere. We saw a 17-foot bully that reminded me of Utah, the crocodile. I saw him in Myrtle Beach, and he's the largest held in captivity in the world. I imagined this place during a hurricane, and a chill went up my spine. It was time to go. After the ranch, Adam and I were in the mood for some trails. We hit Shepherd State Park and took off towards the tall trees of the Pascagoula River and Bayou. They were doing some construction on a cool riverwalk pathway that journeyed us over the swampland about 12 feet up off the ground. Some of the parts were incomplete, so we had to jump across from beam to beam. It was risky because it was swampland in every direction, and there was no easy way back up or to safe land. There were gators, snakes, and of course prowlers lurking nearby. It was the 50th day of summer. The sun was shining, and the wind just felt right. I was having a blast and let off a couple Bigfoot roars. Immediately after, part of me regretted it because I didn't want to disrespect the natives of the land. I had no problem balancing and jumping across the high beams. My biggest enemy was my own stomach. It was growling louder than the beast in the woods. On one of the larger gaps that we had to cross, I had to put a little bit extra oomph into it. And when I landed, my body just let go. I knew I had an emergency. There was a mess in my pants. I waddled to the end of the riverwalk and turned around the way we came. I hopped across these high beams that almost killed me with the gross, wet underwear. I kept checking the back of my legs to make sure it wasn't running. It wasn't that bad, but it sure felt like a catastrophe. I wanted to keep my problem a secret. After a mile in a compromised position, I could already feel the inside of my thighs near my pelvis were chafing. I was in pain. It was damn near bleeding. My skin was rubbed raw. Once we turned onto the path into the forest, I said I had to go to the restroom. Adam continued going straight on the path, and I turned to the left. I jogged out of sight and dropped my pants. As I was in my most vulnerable position, I almost crapped myself again when I heard a loud ruckus just 20 yards from me in the thicket. I felt nauseous, but I knew I had to do something about my situation. I stared off towards the sound and moved very slowly. I peeked down toward my underwear and saw I had to get rid of them. I unraveled them from my cargo shorts and slipped my shoes off. I took my socks off and wiped myself the best I could. It was gross, but needed to be done. I kept guard for the sound, and as I quietly buried my mistake, I pulled my pants up and finally took a breath. It hit a rotten stench that almost knocked me over. I'm sure I was partially to blame for the foul odor, but I believe the creature released pheromones to warn me. It hadn't moved since the crash. The smell and feeling remind me of a skunk or a cat spraying, but multiplied by 10. It was marking its territory and wanted me gone. I could sense that with every atom in me. I put my shoes back on and ran towards Adam. He asked me if I gotten lost and told me I told him I'd gotten a little turned around just to cover up my accident. I asked how long I was gone, and he said more than 10 minutes. It only felt like 30 seconds to me. We continued down the path, and I was just trying not to do any more damage to my legs. The Prowler was in the back of my mind, but with each step, I felt like I was being dragged across concrete. I had a more imminent threat. Though I was still confused about the time cap, I was to make sure I kept up with Adam. He rushed ahead and pointed towards a hole with a bunch of crab bones in it. It was cool, but nothing groundbreaking. We made it back to his parents in the campground in one piece. I went to the actual restroom and cleaned myself up as much as I could. I was thankful that I was able to manage it. I learned to always bring an extra pair of boxers with me. In the car, I pulled a tick out of my ear. Now that created a whole new level of paranoia. I will never forget the day the Prowler made me poop. Yes, guys, that's an embarrassing story, but it's a true story. With my best friend Adam when we visited the Pascagoula River. Check it out on Amazon, Big Brother, Bigfoot. Thank you so much for spending time with us and joining us on our journey. Donnie and Kim, thank you for spending the morning with me, and I know we have many more memories to come. Take it easy, guys.
Amen. Been a good time.